Saturday morning, time for the Experts Program on Power Talk, 1460 and 101 FM. And we kick things off with Luis Alvarez, CEO of the Alvarez Technology Group. Good morning, Luis.
Good morning, Mark. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Hey, before we get any further, I want to say congratulations. You guys won an award. I saw that online. What did you win exactly?
Oh, yeah. The Monterey Peninsula Chambers had their awards dinners last night, and the Chamber acknowledged us as a winner in the business services to business category.
Okay.
And this is the second time we've won that a particular award in the last 4 or 5 years. So it was really nice to be recognized and have a chance to call out my team and say how much I appreciate them and all the hard work that they do, keeping our clients safe, secure, and successful, and being acknowledged by a big part of the business community. So thank you for bringing that up.
So this has a lot to do with network solutions and net security that you guys are involved in for the clients.
Yeah, it's essentially what the Chamber does every year is they go out and they ask the business community to nominate folks in the various categories that they have, and we got nominated, and they put it back out there and say, okay, these are the finalists. Vote for your the person or the company you feel deserves the most, and we came on top of a couple of other service providers. So it was a nice feather in our cap, and we're really proud of the achievement.
Well, congratulations again.
Thank you.
Let's move on to the topic du jour, and that is generic mobile phone chargers. They can electrocute me. I can get burned. I mean, I got to tell you how ironic this is it's part of the job. I sometimes end up working on transmitters where you've got 15,000 volts of power running around that, you touch the wrong spot and that's it. Your goose is cooked. I'd hate to think that a $5 knockoff charger that you pick up at the discount store could do the very same thing to me as a $50,000 transmitter. Good grief.
Oh, yeah. It's not unheard of and unfortunately pretty common where there are these manufacturers of third-party power supplies, and they're power supplies that you use to power up your mobile phones or your tablets and even your laptops and PCs, and they're very shoddily made. That there's no such thing as a free lunch, and if it's too cheap to be true, it's probably too cheap to be used. And a lot of folks will get these very inexpensive chargers thinking, well, I'm saving a couple bucks, and then find themselves with something that can either shock them or electrocute them, or in some cases actually spontaneously burst into flame.
Yikes.
As they overheat and melt the casing. And as you know, every year I go to the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas in January, and one aspect of that show is that there's a number of vendors from all over the world that are trying to find customers for their things like USB cables or power supplies or just any add-on product that you can have. And whenever you go into a convenience store, whether it's a 7-Eleven or a gas station, and you see this rack full of third-party power supplies for your iPhone or your Android, that's where those come from. These companies that are out there marketing themselves, and in all too many cases, it's a race to the bottom in terms of cost, and that always impacts quality. So if you're going to buy a power supply, a spare one or a replacement for something that you have, I would highly recommend that you stick to either a brand that if you have an iPhone, get an Apple charger. But if you are going to buy a third-party charger, make sure that the company that is making it is a company that's known to you and recognizable, and not some knockoff brand that has a name that you can barely pronounce.
OEM. Make sure you get the OEM stuff.
Yep, exactly.
Well, I'll tell you, I had an experience a few years ago, and you might remember this. I had to purchase a power supply for my Lenovo computer, that old laptop that I had. The one that I had, the OEM one, had died. It had been a little bit abused, and so one of the wires on it had frayed, so I went to buy a new one, and I didn't have time to order an OEM one, because you're not going to find the exact brick if you go into Fry's or something like that. You're going to have to buy a universal.
No, definitely not.
So yeah. I bought a universal by a company called Rhino, and it had fairly good reviews for it. And actually, it was a quality piece of equipment. And I bought that. It was like $75, but I was really stuck. I had to have a power supply. We were doing a football game that night. I remember it was a Palma football game. We were up at San Jose City College, and about 2 hours before the broadcast, my power supply died, and I had to go buy one, and it was like a Friday or Saturday evening, I'm like, oh my gosh. So I went down to the Fry store in Campbell and bought what they had, and, that saved the day. But as time went on, one of the things I noticed was when I would use it and I would play audio off of that computer, there would be this buzz that I would get in the audio that would go out over the air. And I was trying to figure out what in the heck it was. And it turned out that the power cord, the AC cord on that brick, did not have a ground plug on it like the OEM would. And so consequently, whatever noise was being generated by that power supply got into the computer and came out through the audio port. And it was a real drag. And so I ended up eventually purchasing OEM ones from Lenovo, and that solved the problem. But that's one of the pitfalls of buying generic or universal stuff.
Yeah, and it's one of those pitfalls that you don't really think about until, like in your case, you were impacted by it, because most people wouldn't know of the EM transmission of something that could cause electromagnetic interference. But yet that same EM, if the casing is not designed properly, it can impact all sorts of other devices that you happen to have nearby, including, unfortunately, if you have medical devices that you're using that are very sensitive, they can be impacted by these power supplies. And a lot of times we'll be called by a client who's having a problem with some other device near their computer, and it turns out to be the power brick or the connector that they're using into the wall socket that's shared by this other device that's causing this electromagnetic interference. So
right.
It's a real thing.
And one of the ways you troubleshoot it is you unplug the brick from the computer, and all of a sudden the noise goes away, and you go, aha, there's the problem.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's pretty simple troubleshooting.
So the thing is, make sure you buy the OEM stuff when at all possible, because besides the fact that sometimes the other, the universal stuff can be an annoyance, it can also be a safety hazard, some of the universal products that aren't very good. So just keep that in mind. Let's say, I know there was one other thing you wanted to mention to us today.
There's something that just got released recently, and that was on the Equifax breach that happened a few years ago. And, the government and Equifax have been negotiating a settlement of sorts, and they finally came up with a number, a pretty big number. It's around $700 million that Equifax is going to be contributing to restitution for having been breached and revealing the private information of millions of people. And that money is available to the consumers that felt that they were victimized by Equifax. They'll reimburse you up to $20,000 in certain circumstances if you actually had been a victim and can show that it was because of this particular breach. So if you want to learn more, I would Google Equifax settlement, and it'll take you to the official website where you can go through there and see if you qualify. There's, everything from I want to have my credit scores monitored and my bank accounts monitored to if I have actually been victimized and I spent money trying to fix my financial record, that I can get compensated for that as well. So I'd recommend it to everybody. If you were a victim of the Equifax breach, go check it out, because you might be due some money.
One last thing. You as an Air Force vet, you're obviously interested in this. Loyal Wingman, part of the future of air combat. This is something from the Paris Air Show. Tell us about it.
This excites me. We live in a time where science fiction is becoming science fact pretty quickly. And one of the staples of science fiction back in the day was this concept of drones being used to fight wars and to support manned aircraft. And the Air Force is working with a number of drone manufacturers to actually make that a reality. The concept called Loyal Wingman is one where you could see one manned aircraft being accompanied by one or more unmanned aircraft, drones, if you will, that are powered by artificial intelligence and respond to directions of manned aircraft to attack targets or surveil over enemy territory or provide, air cover to ground troops. So there's a lot of possibility there, and it's something that the military in general has been trying to do, is leverage automation and power of artificial intelligence to augment the capability of our troops and our airmen and our sailors. So this might save a lot of lives and be used in combat in lieu of manned aircraft and provide another kind of force multiplier that is a lot cheaper than an F-22, which is almost, a $1.2 billion aircraft.
Right.
And can use these cheap, they're still $1 million drones, but they're not $1 billion drones to do the actual fighting, and the pilot stands off and provides guidance and additional additional cover. But it's a whole new world in air combat that is rapidly evolving, not just in our Air Force, but fortunately our adversaries are looking at it as well in China and Russia. So we need to stay on top of it.
The F-22 is $1.2 billion, huh?
All in, yeah. When you factor in the support and the manpower required to keep that thing flying, it's an expensive plane.
Yeah, so if you're a pilot and you have to ditch one of those, how far down the promotion list do you fall?
You better, it's one of those things where you might be tempted to go down with the airplane, but you better have a really, really good reason for ditching that plane.
Yeah, what's that out of the way Air Force Base in Alaska? You'll end up flying a desk there for the rest of your career.
Elmendorf, it's fun.
That's right, Elmendorf. Oh, man. This new drone is made by Boeing, and hopefully they're not using the same software in it that's in the Supermax 737.
Yeah, I hope it's not the same team. Maybe they use the A team for these drones.
Okay. Anybody who wants to look at this story, it's on AINonline.com.
Yeah, or you can Google Loyal Wingman, and there's a number of stories about right now what's experimental aircraft, but the concept itself and some of the tactics that will be used, that could be used with these drones as accompaniments to manned aircraft.
Well, very interesting. Keep an eye on that, because as you're always looking to increase capability and cut costs, just like business. And so we'll see, where this drone business goes and how it comes along. Luis Alvarez has been our guest, CEO of the Alvarez Technology Group, online, alvareztg.com. @AlvarezTG is the Twitter handle. Luis, the toll-free number for the I-Team.
You give us a call at 866-78-I-Team. That's 866-784-8326.